Moreover, David said, the Lord who delivered me from the paw of the lion and from the paw of the bear, he will deliver me from the hand of this Philistine. You cannot forget what God has delivered you from. You cannot forget where God has brought you out of. You cannot forget, because I'm telling you, when the enemy shows up, you got to understand the enemy is going to come back. But what are you going to have to show for it when the enemy comes back? Listen, Satan, God delivered me from that. He delivered me from that. He delivered me from that. He delivered me from that. What makes you think that he won't deliver me from you? What chance do you stand? If God's delivering me from the hands of the lion, if he's delivering me from the hands of the bear, if he's delivering me from the hands of oppression, if he's delivering me from the hands of depression, if he's delivering me from the hands of lust, if he's delivering me from alcohol, if he's delivering me from pornography, if God has delivered me from all of this stuff before, what makes you think that you stand a chance to keep me bound? And so Genesis chapter 1, verse 1 out of the New King James Version, it says this: in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The earth was without form and void, and darkness was on the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters. Verse 3, then God said, let there be light, and there was light. And God saw the light, that it was good, and God divided the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. So the evening and the morning were the first day. Let's actually drop down to verse 24. I'm not going to read the whole thing. You can go back and read all of God's creations on your own time. Verse 24, it says, then God said, let the earth bring forth the living creature according to its kind, cattle and creeping thing and beast of the earth, and each according to its kind. And so it was. And God made the beast of the earth according to its kind, cattle according to its kind, and everything that creeps on the earth according to its kind. And God said that it was good. And so now, when you get on your own time, go back and read how God created the earth, how he created the waters, how he created the firmament, how he created the heavens and the earth. Go back and read how he created all of that stuff. But when you read it, I need you to understand that God said it was good. That was it. God didn't give it any power. God didn't give it any authority. God just said it was good. Everything that God creates is good, but what he created in you was a rulership and a reign. God did not give the ability to anything else to rule and to reign this earth that he created except humankind. Verse 26. Then God said, let us make man in our image according to our likeness. Let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, and over the cattle, over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth. Verse 27, so God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him, male and female, he created them. Then God blessed them, and God said to them, now, I need you to grab this. Not in any other part of that did God bless or say anything to anything else. God didn't bless the waters. He didn't bless the sun. He didn't bless the moon. He didn't bless the night. He didn't bless the day. But when it came to his created being that was created in his likeness, that was created in his image, that was created in his power, that was created in his authority, that was created to rule and to reign, he said, listen, I've got to bless you. There are some things that I've got to say to you. There are some things that I've got to get over to you. There are some things that I've got to impart into you. I've got some stuff I got to say to those that have rulership and reign. And so now, in this season, God has some things to say to those that have a rulership and a reign. God is speaking. Man shall not live by bread alone, but by what? Every word that proceeds from the mouth of God. And so now, everything else, the sun survives off the energy, and the moon and the stars, and all that stuff works together. But God said, listen, I have some specific blessings. If I can get my words together, I've got some specific blessings that I've got to give over to my people. He said this, and God blessed them, and God said to them, be fruitful and multiply. Fill the earth and subdue it. Have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, and over every living thing that moves on the earth. And so now God gave you dominance over everything that possesses this earth. Everything that walks, everything that moves, everything that breathes. And so now, if I'm reminded correctly, in Job, it talked about how Satan was roaming around the earth. And so now, if God's given you power and authority over every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth, that means when the enemy shows up and begins to creep up on the earth, when the enemy shows up in your life and starts to creep up in your joy, when he starts to creep up in your finances, when he starts to creep up in your health, what is God saying? You have dominion and power over that thing. You've got dominion and power over it. And so now God created this atmosphere. He created this place for dominance and rulership and reign. God created a place that needed to have someone here that was going to control it, that was going to rule it, that was going to prosper it, that was going to dominate it. And so now God gave over to Adam and Eve the Garden of Eden. Donna Lawrence wrote a great song a few years ago called Let's Get Back to Eden and Live on Top of the World. God is saying, listen, I need you to get back to the place of your reign. I need you to get back to the place where you have dominance, where you have dominion, where you have power and you have authority. Every atmosphere that I put you in is a place for you to rule and reign. The atmosphere of your home is a place for you to rule and reign. The atmosphere of your job is a place for you to rule and reign. The atmosphere of this world is a place for you to rule and to reign. I need you to grab a hold of the power and authority that God's placed in your life. You have the right to reign. Verse 29, and God said, see, I have given you every herb that yields seed, which is on the face of all the earth, and every tree whose fruit yields seed. To you it shall be for food. Verse 30, also to every beast of the earth, to every bird of the air, and to everything that creeps on the earth in which there is life, I have given every green herb for food. And it was so. Then God saw everything that he had made, and indeed it was very good. So the evening and the morning were the sixth day. Listen, you got to understand, before God could finish creating the earth, before God could finish doing anything, your dominance had to be put in place. God could not rest until your dominance and your reign was effective in the earth. I need somebody just to grab a hold of that. God could not say it was finished until he was able to say that you reign. God was not able to finish his creation. God was not able to stop what he was doing. God could not bless it and say that everything was good. Why? Because there was no manager in place to rule over it and to dominate it. God could not stop doing his creative process without having somebody in place that was going to manage it. In order for the fullness of God's vision to come to pass, guess what? You had to dominate. From the very foundations of the world, your rulership and your reign was put in effect. So where did you get off course and you allowed the enemy to speak something different into your life, to cause you to see things another way, to cause you to think that you don't have rulership, to cause you to think that you don't have reign? If God said it, that means that it's established. If God decreed it, that means it's got to be done. If God's called it to pass, that means it's got to happen. Not one word shall return to him void before heaven and earth pass away. Guess what? It's time for you to reign. God is creating spaces and atmospheres just to drop you into reign. God's given over some things to you just so that you can reign, just so that you can have authority, just so that you can have power, just so that you can show forth your dominance. Pastor Natavia said it on Tuesday night. God has created us for such a time as this. God is beginning. Listen, there are some of you that are in some places that are absolutely foreign to you. They're brand new. Things that God is opening up. God has to create a space because your dominance is so great. God has got to give you something to plant and to build and to grow and to manifest. God is opening doors for you in places that no man has gone before. God is opening doors for you in places that no man has ever thought. God is opening doors for you in arenas and in areas that could not be open before, but because you are now in position to rule and to reign, God is saying, hey, I've got the perfect man for the job. Hey, I've got the perfect woman for the job. I know somebody that knows who they are. I know somebody that can rule. I know somebody that can reign. I know somebody that has dominance. I know somebody that has power. I know somebody that has authority. I know somebody that I've been training and that I've been grooming and that I've been bringing together for my glory. I know someone who I made in my image and in my likeness that's going to come and reign over everything that sets foot in this place. God said it's time for you to reign. From the very beginning of your existence, it was confirmed and required that you reign. That wasn't just something that God just said. When he spoke to the season, he said, hey, you stop right here. That was a command. That was a requirement that it could not come any further. When God separated the day from the night, it said, listen, you are required to be up during this hour, and you are required to be up during this hour. That was a requirement. That was a demand. When God blessed them and said, go and dominate, that was not a suggestion. That was a requirement and a demand. You have been given a charge, and you've been given authority to rule and to reign and to dominate. It is required that as the believer, you dominate. So why are you failing in your finances? Why are you not succeeding in the workplace? Why are you not succeeding in your home? Why are you, listen, you've got to readjust and shift your mindset to the place that says, I reign. It is a requirement that every believer get into position to reign. How can we ever receive the wealth of the wicked that's laid up for the righteous if we don't know how to reign over the little that we have? God said, listen, I've got some things stored up for you, but who's going to dominate this thing? Who's going to take this thing to the next level? Who's going to take this thing to the place who's going to expand my vision? You were created from the very foundation of the world to rule and to reign. Jeremiah 1:5. Before you were formed in your mother's womb, I knew of you and I approved of you. God, before the foundations of the earth, God said you will reign. You've got to get into a position where reigning is the only thing that's on your mind. You're not worried about what the enemy's trying to do. You're not worried about all hell breaking loose around you. Why? Because you got control over hell. You got control over all the water that's trying to rise up around you. You got control over everything that's trying to rise up in your marriage. You got control over everything that tries to rise up in your health. You got control over everything that tries to rise up in your finances. Why? Because God didn't say you just dominate over the birds. He said, listen, you dominate over the birds of the air, the fish of the sea. You dominate over every beast of the field. God has given you supreme power and supreme rulership over everything that creeps upon this earth. Why do you think that Jesus was able to stand up in front of the waters and the winds and the rain and call to shut its mouth and to stop? Why? Because he understood the ability that he had to rule and to reign. From the foundations of the world, you were created to reign. What does it mean to dominate? It means to be the most important or conspicuous person or thing. Conspicuous means standing out so as to be clearly visible, attracting notice or attention. As a person of dominance, you should draw attention to yourself. As a person of dominance, you should be attracting attention to you. People should be trying to figure out, listen, there's just something on your life that I've got to be connected to you. There's just something about you. There's something about the way that you walk. There's something about the way that you talk. There's something about your presence and your aura. There's something that's powerful about it. I'll never forget, I walked into a business one day to go see the CEO and his partner. And I walked in, and I didn't see the CEO. I went and saw the CFO. And when I went to go speak to him, I said, hey, how are you? We talked for a minute. And I walked back to the office of the CEO, and he said, wait a minute. When you walked in, I didn't know who was here, but I just felt a power. I just felt some type of presence that just showed up in this place. I felt the atmosphere change because you showed up. Listen, every situation, every problem, every time you open your eyes and wake up, everything that you're facing should say, you know what? Something in the atmosphere just changed because power just showed up. Everything in this workplace, something just shifted. Why? Because power showed up. Every time you log into your online banking, it's to say, wait a minute, I've got to get myself together. I know there's some overdraft fees here. I know it's in the negative. I need to get myself in alignment because power just showed up in this place. Every time you show up to a doctor's office, they gotta begin to say, listen, there's power that just showed up in this place. I don't know what happened. I don't know what it was. The doctor should not even be able to get himself together to utter the words of that negative report. Why? Because the power of God has shown up so strong and dominating in that place. Everything that you face has to become subservient to your dominance. The moment you walk in the house, your husband got to get in line. He got to act right. The moment you walk in the house, your wife, she got to act right. Because there's a power that done showed up. The moment that you walk into that place, your children, they got to get in line because they understand that their atmosphere was just shifted because a presence of dominance just showed up. No weapon formed against me shall what? Prosper. I laugh in the face of danger. I laugh in the face of danger. You got to understand, David was such a little boy that when he began to put on the armor that they thought that he was going to need, he was falling over and he could barely walk. He said, get this stuff up off of me. I can't go with this. Listen, I have the peace of God. I have the favor of God. I've got some people that are behind me. I've got a greater army. I've got a greater shield than anything I can put on this body. I've got everything that I need to whoop your behind. I'm telling you, you got to laugh in the face of danger. So Saul clothed David with his armor. I skipped ahead. And he put a bronze helmet on his head. He also clothed him with a coat of mail. David fastened his sword to his armor, and he tried to walk, for he had not tested them. And David said to Saul, I can now walk with these, for I have not tested them. So David took them off. Verse 40, then he took his staff in his hand, and he chose for himself 5 smooth stones from the brook. Now, this staff is the same staff that he used when he was out there fighting the lion and the bear. What is the significance of that? You got to use the same tools before that you used to defeat the enemy to defeat him again. You cannot go through something and think that this is just enough. I ain't got to use it no more. I can put that on the shelf. God is saying, no, don't stop doing what you did to get to where you are, because the same thing that you did back then is going to be the same thing that's going to bring you through this time here. God said, I'm the same yesterday, today, and forevermore. The same tools that you used 20 years ago to defeat that thing is the same thing that you're going to use now to get over and to defeat the enemy. The same thing that you used last season is the very thing that you're going to need in this season. The same thing that you used yesterday is the same thing that you're going to need today. Stop trying all this new age stuff. They have not been tested. He said, I can't walk with this stuff. I have not tested this in battle. I know something. I know someone. I know a name that's greater than any name that's been tested in battle and that has won. You've got to begin to laugh in the face of danger. Then he took his staff in his hand, and he chose for himself 5 small stones from the brook and put them in a shepherd's bag in a pouch which he had, and his sling was in his hand. And he drew near to the Philistine. So the Philistine came and began drawing near to David, and the man who bore the shield went before him. And when the Philistine looked about and saw David, he disdained him, for he was only a youth, ruddy and good looking. So the Philistine said to David, am I a dog that you come to me with sticks? Oh, I got to break this down. Listen, it said that Goliath showed up with all the armor, the very things that David threw away. Your enemy is going to come fully stocked. Your enemy is going to come fully prepared, but it ain't going to be enough. The very thing, listen, the very thing that the enemy is trying to bring to you, just as it hadn't been tested for David, it hasn't been tested for Goliath neither, because it has not come against the power of God. There is nothing that the enemy can present before you that can cause you to think that it's going to prosper, because no weapon formed against you will prosper. Nothing that the enemy tries to build to protect itself from the things that God is getting ready to do, to protect himself from the hell fury that God is getting ready to rain down. There is nothing that the enemy is going to be able to use to protect himself. God said, listen, I've got something that you ain't seen yet. Eyes have not seen, nor ear heard, neither has it entered into the heart of man what's getting ready to happen. God said, I'm getting ready to put some things into your hands that's going to look like they're nothing more than sticks to man, no more than sticks to the enemy, but they are going to be powerful, mighty arrows in my hand. I'm telling you, I'm getting ready to put some things, some tools into your hand that's going to completely destroy everything that the kingdom of hell is trying to do. Stop looking at what the enemy has. Your faith cannot survive based off of what you see. Just because you see the enemy with all the armor, just because you see the enemy with all the weapons, just because you see the enemy with all the gear, does not mean that it's going to prosper. God did not say that the weapons would not form. He said that the weapons will form, but they will not prosper. Where's your level of faith? You've been chosen for this. Stop looking at the fact that the enemy's messed with your finances. Fine, that's great. Do what you got to do. I know somebody that's great. I got a stone that's going to combat that. The enemy's trying to mess with your family. There's a stone to combat that. I have tools. I've got some things. Listen, you better go ask that lion and that bear about me. I've got some things. Oh, I got to get through this. Hallelujah. I'm running out of time. Hallelujah. And the Philistine cursed David by his gods. Verse 44. And the Philistine said to David, come to me, and I will give your flesh to the birds of the air and the beasts of the field. Verse 45. Then David said to the Philistine, You come to me with a sword, with a spear, and with a javelin. But I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, from whom you have defied. This day the Lord will deliver you into my hand, and I will strike you and take your head from you. I'm telling you, the enemy put out a call, and that call was answered, and it was returned with something far greater. I'm telling you, just because the enemy looks like it's big and bad, don't mean it's as big and as bad as you think. Goliath in stature was 9 feet tall, almost 10 feet tall. David being 4 or 5 feet tall, there is a huge difference in that. But he's saying, listen, this is what God's going to do for me today. You say that you're going to feed me and my flesh to the birds of the air. Well, if I go back to Genesis chapter 1, that tells me that I have dominion over the birds of the air. How in the world are you going to feed me to something that I have authority to tell you better shut your mouth? You can't come near me. Don't you touch me. You can't eat me. You can't have me. So now God is saying, listen, you got to now reverse this thing, and you got to begin to say some things to the enemy. The enemy has fed you some lies. That was a bold-faced lie. How in the world are the birds going to eat me when I have control? The birds are on my side. The birds going to peck you to death. The birds are on my side. They will turn against you in just a heartbeat. You think that you got something on me because you're going to kill me. I'm telling you, there's nothing that'll be able to stop me. And so now we keep reading. Hallelujah. This day that the Lord will deliver you into my hand, and I will strike you and take your head from you. And this day I will give the carcasses of the camp of the Philistines to the birds of the air and the wild beasts of the earth, that all the earth may know that there is a God in Israel. God had to take it a step further. See, the only thing that Goliath could think about was what was standing in front of him. I'm going to give your carcass and I'm going to give your flesh to the birds. But God said, I'm going to give the Philistines over to the beasts of the field, to the birds of the air. God didn't just stop at that one spot. God said, I've given you dominance. I've given you authority. I've given you reign. Why are you just stopping at the one thing when I've given you rulership over everything? God said, listen, Goliath, the enemy, it's not just enough to take out this one. I have the power to take out all. You think that God is trying to give you just this little bitty corner office? God said, I want to give you the whole company. You think that God is just trying to give you a room in a house? God said, I want to give you the whole village. God saying, you know what? You just want a paycheck and a few overtime hours every week. God said, I want to give you the bank. I want to give you all the money. I've got some things that I want for you. The enemy's trying to demean you. He's trying to denounce you from what I said belongs to you. You've got to get into a position where you stand up and say, you know what? You may try to take me up, but God said, all you and all your people are about to be given over to the hand. Hallelujah. Verse 47, then all this assembly shall know that the Lord does not save with sword and spear, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give you into our hands. So it was when the Philistine arose and came and drew near to meet David, that David hurried and ran toward the army to meet the Philistine. Then David put his hand in his bag and took out a stone, and he swung it and struck the Philistine in his forehead, so that the stone sank into his forehead, and he fell on his face to the earth. Verse 50, so David prevailed over the Philistine with a sling and a stone, and struck the Philistine and killed him. But there was no sword in the hand of David. Therefore David ran and stood over the Philistine, took his sword and drew out of his sheath and killed him and cut off his head with it. God is going to give you the very things that the enemy's trying to take you out with. They're going to have to run from the very same things, the very same plots, the very same attacks, the very same weapons that were formed. The reason why they're not going to prosper against you is because God is giving them into your hands for you to go and take out the enemy. The enemy is doing half the work for you. The enemy is doing half the work for you. God said, you're worried about trying to create something. I've got people that'll create that for you. You should be happy when the enemy shows up because they're about to deliver something into your hand. You should be happy when the enemy shows up because the very things, no weapon that is formed against you will prosper. But guess what? It's going to be given over into your hands for you to be able to go out and take out that same enemy. Jesus. Pastor Natavia, she said she's been saying this the last few times that she's prayed before service is open, and she'll say, God, the same thing that the enemy tries to bring unto us, Father, we think that that same thing he'll have to run from. If he brings fear to my life, I think that he'll have to run from that same fear. If he tries to bring this to my life, I think they'll have to run from that same thing. The very things that the enemy is trying to take you out with, God is saying, don't fret, don't worry. Use the tools that I've given you. You go and take them out. Then you take their own weapons and you kill them with it. He said he didn't have a sword. You're worried about the things that you don't have. God said, I'm going to give you your daily bread, right? So that means when David showed up without a sword, the very things that were trying to be given over to him by man, he said, no, I can't take that because that hasn't been tested. I can't take that because I don't need it. God said, I'm going to give you your daily bread. So when he showed up to that battle and he killed Goliath, God said, there's your sword right there. Go ahead and pick it up and do what you got to do. Take it out of the hands of the enemy. Take it out of the enemy's army. Take it out of the enemy's camp. And now go do what you got to do. Fulfill my word. Fulfill my law. The enemy's not going to be able to stop you. And when the Philistines saw that their champion was dead, they fled. What are demons going to do without Satan? What are demons going to do without Satan? They have no power without their leader. You cut off the head of the leader, you cut off the rest of the tribe. You dig up the root, you dig up what's at the head, you take off the head, and you have nothing else to worry about. God is saying, I'm giving you some things that are going to utterly destroy the head of the enemy in your life.
If you would like to become a partner of Connecting Church, you can do so as well by going to the website. We encourage you, we invite you to become a partner. We can't do this without you. We need your support in order to continue to further our vision of connecting the world to Jesus, one soul at a time. Thank you so much. I appreciate you for watching. We love you guys. We're always praying for you guys, and we will see you next week.
Listen, the enemy's trying to disqualify you without even knowing your resume. The enemy's trying to disqualify you without even knowing what you fought and what you've been through. The enemy's trying to disqualify you before he even knows everything that you did, everything that you had to fight. He's saying, listen, you telling me I'm just a man of youth. I'm just a man of youth. And you talking about this guy that's supposed to be so great, so big. You don't understand that when I was in my father's pasture, just herding the sheep, when a lion or a bear would come, I would be the one that would go out there and kill it. And when it came up against me again, I would grab it by the beard, I would toss it to the ground, and I would handle it. He showed forth his dominance. The enemy is trying to remove the dominance and the reign that you have in your life, but you've got to begin to remind the enemy, listen, you're trying to come up against me when you don't even know where I've been. You don't know what I've been through. You don't know what I have in my arsenal. You don't know what I have on my resume. You don't know what I have in my past. You don't know that I will take you and I will destroy you. The enemy's trying to take you out without even knowing your resume. Listen, some of y'all better just start telling the enemy, Google me. Google me. You better ask about me. You don't understand who I am. Don't let this outside fool you. Don't let this outside fool you. And so already the enemy's trying to disqualify him from what he's called to do. He was set in such a time as that. He was created fearfully and wonderfully made, just the way he was. Your past, all the things that you've been through, it was fearfully and wonderfully made. All the things that you face, all the things that you struggle through, it was fearfully and wonderfully made. I'm telling you, the story of your past life, it was created, it was crafted specifically for this moment and this opportunity where you will rule and reign. Just because God does not look like he's doing something does not mean he's come out of agreement of his promise.
The devil is a liar. He's under your feet, and you shall walk in the power. You shall walk in the dominion. You shall walk in the authority that God said belongs to you.